Sometimes it takes just one sound to ignite a storm. For Ethan, that sound was the blaring horn of the HOA president's shiny black truck. But this wasn't about traffic or parking, it was about his bull, Duke. Standing tall, broad-shouldered, and gentle as a lamb most days, Duke was more than livestock. He was Ethan's pride, his late father's gift, and the living heart of their family's small piece of land. The neighborhood had always been divided about Duke. Some adored him, snapping photos of the majestic animal as he grazed peacefully. Others, led by the strict HOA president, Richard, saw him as a nuisance. Rules, they said, didn't allow farm animals inside the community boundaries. Ethan argued that Duke was more than that. He was family, and his land had been there long before the HOA even existed. That morning, as Duke rested near the fence line, Richard drove by. The loud horn shattered the calm, startling Duke. His massive body jolted, eyes wide, muscles rippling with tension. Ethan's heart sank. He knew Duke's spirit, calm when respected, but never forgiving when mocked. Richard had no idea that his careless honk was about to spark a chain of events that would change the neighborhood forever. Richard didn't stop at honking. He rolled down his window, yelling across the yard about HOA rules, about how Duke didn't belong here. His words carried the sharpness of authority, but behind them was arrogance. Ethan stood his ground, calm yet firm. "This land was my father's before your HOA was even dreamed of," he said. Duke stays. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, some secretly rooting for Ethan, others whispering about the HOA's power. Richard thrived on intimidation, but what he underestimated was Ethan's quiet resilience. Ethan wasn't a man of confrontation, but he was a man of principle. That night, Ethan brushed Duke's coat under the stars. The bull leaned gently against him, like a giant protector. Ethan whispered, "Don't worry, boy. No one's taking you from here." Yet his heart was heavy. He knew Richard wouldn't stop. HOA battles were never simple. They weren't about fairness but about control. And Ethan, with his bull at his side, was about to face Richard's relentless obsession head-on. Days passed and Richard escalated. Notices appeared on Ethan's door. Warnings, fines, demands for Duke's removal. Each paper felt like a personal attack, designed to wear him down. But Ethan refused to bow. Instead, he kept Duke closer than ever, walking him near the fence where neighbors could see. Children waved. Families snapped photos. The community began to quietly rally, sensing that Duke wasn't the problem. Richard was. Richard, however, couldn't stand losing control. One crisp morning, he drove through the neighborhood again, revving his truck engine near Duke. The sound thundered against the fence, a deliberate taunt. Duke's ears flicked, his body stiffening. Ethan rushed over, hands up, trying to calm both man and beast. But Richard leaned harder on his horn, smirking as if victory came from noise. The tension was unbearable. Duke pawed the ground, his muscles rippling, his instincts ignited. Ethan shouted, "Richard, stop!" But Richard didn't listen. He didn't realize that he wasn't just antagonizing a bull. He was poking at years of dignity, patience, and silent strength. And something inside Duke was about to snap. The honk echoed one last time, and Duke surged forward. With a force of nature that no machine could tame, Duke charged at the fence. The ground shook as his hooves thundered. Richard panicked, slamming the accelerator, but fate had already chosen its course. Duke's horns caught the side of the shiny truck, lifting it just enough to tip it sideways. The truck screeched, tires spinning helplessly as it tilted into the snowy ditch by the roadside. Gasps filled the air as neighbors ran out of their homes, phones raised, mouths open in shock. Ethan stood frozen, torn between awe and fear. He had never seen Duke like this, majestic, fierce, unstoppable. Richard climbed out, shaken and embarrassed, his authority dented as badly as his truck. For once, the HOA president had no words. The bull stood tall, chest heaving, then calmly returned to grazing, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Ethan stroked Duke's neck, whispering, "You've spoken for both of us today." The crowd murmured, a tide turning against Richard's arrogance. The HOA tried to rally behind Richard, sending more notices, threatening legal action. But the story of the truck and the bull spread faster than any letter. Neighbors shared videos online, turning Richard's humiliation into neighborhood legend. Suddenly, the HOA president wasn't feared, he was mocked. Ethan, however, never gloated. He cared for Duke as always, reinforcing the fence, ensuring peace. But within him a quiet pride grew. His father had once told him, "Respect is earned, not forced." Richard had forced rules, but Duke had earned respect without saying a word. Richard's allies began to dwindle. Meetings turned tense as homeowners questioned his leadership, his obsession with control. Children laughed when they passed the ditch, pointing at the spot where Duke had made his stand. Slowly, the power Richard once clung to began slipping through his fingers, replaced by the undeniable truth that no paper rule could outmatch community spirit. Weeks later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Richard sat stiffly at the table, but his voice no longer carried weight. Homeowners stood one after another, speaking not just about Duke, but about years of unfair fines and bullying. The bull had become more than an animal. He was a symbol of resistance, a reminder of dignity. Finally, the vote was called. Richard was removed as president, his authority stripped. The HOA promised transparency, fairness, and a fresh start. Ethan didn't celebrate loudly. Instead, he walked home under the quiet glow of winter skies, Duke by his side. The ditch still bore tire marks, a silent reminder of what had happened. But more importantly, the neighborhood bore change. Richard's reign of fear had ended not with anger, but with truth revealed by a single powerful moment. Months later, children still told the story of the bull that flipped the truck. Families laughed, neighbors smiled more freely, and Ethan felt peace he hadn't known in years. Duke, calm and steady, grazed as always, unaware of the legend he had become. Ethan often thought of his father, of the values he had instilled: patience, respect, quiet strength. He realized Duke embodied them all, not through force, but through presence, dignity, and timing. The neighborhood was different now, lighter, freer, kinder, and at its heart stood one man, his bull, and a story that reminded everyone. Sometimes, the simplest truths can topple the tallest walls of pride. Sometimes, even a bull grazing quietly can become the greatest defender of what truly matters.